The topic is energy, and I have learned that space is alive, because I've done some so-called cloud busting operations that prove that to me. It really feels like caressing a living thing, living being, when you're working with this weather work. But aside from that, I've learned that the important thing that my father said, Wilhelm Reich, is that this energy can be used practically. And it can be used in medical ways, and I have a lot of experiences with the application of a discovery that he made called the orgone energy accumulator, based on a principle of layering. But basically, you can influence space, and the space within or surrounded or on one side of such a device. There's a different inductance, there's a different concentration of life energy, and consequently you can recharge energy systems that have run down, which has great bearing on the whole problem of cancer, AIDS, and all terminal diseases and all serious illnesses with debilitated states. So I had 10 years of practical experience in the medical practice many years ago now, in a country setting, using the orgone energy accumulator with very interesting results. And my heart breaks because present-day modern American medicine and its system does not permit new things to happen, so that I've been forbidden to use this device. Or if I want to be an MD, I can't use it. So I've been busy instructing people to build these devices themselves and make their own experiences, which is the only way to go. Secondly, I have experiences with the weather work, with this application of moving energy potentials in space, in the life energy atmosphere around the Earth. And thirdly, I was a witness to the phenomenon of the orgone energy motor that Wilhelm Reich, my father, developed. And he also had a film showing this motor, and I experienced it. You could get near it, and it would run from the field, the energy field around the organism. This device has not been fully developed, but he did offer it to the United States Air Force in 1954. It was offered to the United States government for money if they wanted to have a device that might be what Wilhelm Reich thought a better way to go into interplanetary travel or travel beyond the field of the Earth. And he developed also a set of mathematical equations. He converted all gravity equations, Newtonian, into pendulum equations that freed mass from mass was freed. The length of the pendulum is the only thing that matters. So he had a mathematics and he had the motor. Now, I saw the motor in action. I don't know the principle of it. But I'm a witness to the fact that he offered this to the United States in the form of my husband, William Moise, who on the way west in the fall of 1954 offered this officially to Dayton, Ohio, Air Force Technical Intelligence. And we were always put into the crackpot file. So these are very, very practical applications. And above all, I have personal experience with number 4, the reviving and the recirculation of this energy in the human body, which means that I had experiences with the so-called Reich blood test, which observes living blood cells in the live state, watching them as they come out of the body, how quickly they die and disintegrate, which is a measure of vitality. And I saw the reversal of the signals of this blood test when naturopathic healing was applied and when the accumulator was used. That is, you can reverse debilitated states. And then the blood test returns to a normal set of criteria. So you can see the blood illuminating. Each cell carries luminous energy that you can see under light microscopy as developed by Wilhelm Reich, which, by the way, doesn't exist now. He worked with uncoated lenses at very high magnifications. And then I witnessed some rather incredible healings with this device. Above all, I witnessed the healing of wounds practically under your eyes. For instance, an abrasion from a saw on a shin, treated with the accumulator for 4 hours steady, and you could just watch it going through the stages of healing, and at the end of the 4 hours, that was new skin. Things, I mean, incredible things. This kind of knowledge was so important to me that I'm grieving for, this was invented in 1940 and this is 1990, and we waited 50 years to allow human beings to apply this. The limiting factor is, of course, that the life energy envelope around the Earth is dying off now because of various factors. One of them being slowing of the rotation, slowing of the equatorial energy stream, narrowing of this field. As we see it in the blood cells of cancer patients, I mean, the field gets narrowing. And now we are faced with the fact that the accumulator has to be modified when the atmospheric energy is not good, what we call DOR, deadly orgone energy. It is not as strong, but the effect is still there. So I've learned that Earth is in danger of life dying out here, which is a tragedy because we are a beautiful little spaceship glowing blue.
When did your father become interested in UFOs, and what were some of his ideas and your memories and your sightings of UFOs?
I don't really know when he got interested, but I know that I was there when he, I think the first sighting that I had myself, I told you about, was in Maine, at the coast where we lived. And we're doing some freshening of the atmosphere, cloud busting. Not cloud busting, it's a door removal. Gentle breezes just moving so the sky would be baby blue and the birds would sing and so on. Short operations, maybe 15 minutes, 20 minutes at the most. And it was in the evening, and I saw my first UFO when my husband called me. I was upstairs down and said, Eva, come quick. And there were two lights sort of flying, rather large lights, bigger than Jupiter or any planets would be. And they came from behind a grove, and they flew in front of some clouds and through some clouds, low cumulus, and they appeared back of the clouds. I mean, they were close by. I can't estimate distances, but I would say they were within a few hundred yards of us. And I just, no sound, and it was, we felt, in response to this freshening operator as he was working on the cloudbuster for a freshening operation. Removing the stagnant energy and keeping the fresh stuff coming in, which we did very gently and briefly and so on. And I was just amazed. I was just, whoo, what's that? And that's the first sighting that I personally had, but we had many sightings. The next remarkable incident, and when my father published the Contact with Space, he included the Air Force questionnaire about UFO sightings. And that was a very daring deed at the time, because that was you weren't allowed to say that the Air Force was even questioning you, and it was all very hidden. And I don't know whether they still have that questionnaire or not now. But it involved estimating how many angles and how long and so on. And then I was there twice visiting when my father pointed what he called the space gun, which was really a combination of the Oro substance, which was the modified radium needle, which he had treated during the Oro experiment and was now acting differently. For instance, didn't discharge in a charged electroscope anymore. And this needle was brought to a cloudbuster. I mean, that was what we did in Oro Desert EA when we went out to the Arizona desert. Now, I don't know whether this, I can't remember. I was just at Organon. It was towards dusk, and there was an object hanging in the sky towards the, I would say, south west. And and I can't remember now whether he pointed the cloudbuster at it with the Oro or not at that incident. And I saw the thing fading and disappearing, and I wasn't really, I was a little scared. I thought that was a dangerous thing to do, and I wasn't really sure whether it went behind clouds because it was getting dark, or the mist layer or whatever. I didn't have a very strong reaction, but he felt that they were sensitive to energy removal, because when you're doing the plain cloud busting, you are drawing into a well, and it's like a modified lighting conductor, takes so-called static charges away. And I remember that he was interested at that point that there seemed to be two nodes of energy that he could influence this phenomenon distant from the actual light in the sky. In other words, like nodes sensitive to this process of withdrawal.
They kind of work it
yeah,
like this
and
underneath.
I can't. I think I don't remember that first time.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the autumn of 1954, just before we went to Expedition Oro Desert EA in Arizona, in Tucson, and I was had already joined his team, and I think, I can't remember whether Peter and Bill were still there, but so it was October, I think, and I saw another time, a second time, when he influenced this with blinking out and fading. And I wasn't very sure what was really happening. You know, I didn't really.
But you can verify that he wasn't making up the objects
no,
in
I
the
mean,
sky.
that
You
was
saw them also.
a bright planet-like.
And that they weren't.
Yeah, but what was
helicopters?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't noiseless, and it was hanging there, star-like, pretending to be a star. That I'm sure.
What was your subjective impression of the UFOs when they were?
Well, the most scared that I was, and terribly scared, was on Expedition Oro EA when our job got to be drawing from an object that used to appear red, white, and blue blinking kind of thing in the direction of Tucson. We were probably 20 miles out of Tucson because we were 10 miles beyond the end of the town, which was Oracle Junction. So it was quite a ways to the center. It would have taken you a good hour to drive there. And well, what scared me, and I was really, you know, when I should backtrack. I was there as an observer the night that the aurora was flown in a small plane, dragged behind in this thing that Dr. Silvert had devised behind a rope, and it shouldn't get near metal, so because that activated it. I mean, the counts went high on the specially charged Geiger counters, so they dragged it. And we were waiting for that plane to arrive at Tucson Airport, not the main commercial airport, but a place where the small planes landed. And it might have been a separate, small plane. But I remember there was just a small hut and a few people. Anyway, what impressed me that night is that as this plane was approaching that area and finally landed pretty much late in the evening, like 10:30, 11, I just saw an awful lot of flares dropping. In other words, it was like flying star night, but then it was the time of meteorite, the showers. It was November, I guess. But I remember saying, I felt very moved because everywhere I looked, these things, they were not just flying across the sky, they were dropping everywhere I looked. And that's unexplained to this day, in my mind. So this aurora being moved did something to somebody. And then, we used it, and we used it by bringing it near metal on the cloudbuster, which is another thing. But getting on with the business of what my reactions, personal reactions to all this, I didn't know what was going on. I was out of my element. I'd been a country doctor, and all of a sudden I broke up my practice. I wasn't prepared for what was happening. And it was over my head, and I wasn't functioning too well because I didn't know what was going on. And basically, my father, in his trying to digest the new, didn't transmit too much. So when I read the Orob Desert Report, I said, this is what happened, this is what happened. But I saw the phenomena. We were usually at this building, a set of ranches, low buildings. There was a staircase to sort of a platform, like a balcony on the roof, which was ideal. And that's where we had daily meetings, what was the order of the day, what was the mail bringing. And I couldn't express my distress or my not knowing. But anyway, we were up on that little roof one night, and I saw a light coming to Mount Lemmon, which was towards our east, looking north, towards our east. And this light went, vroom, boom. That's not what a meteor does, right? And it's not behavior. So I saw some odd lights that did odd things. I would say almost a sharp V, less than 30 degrees. And soundless, again. And I was scared. The job that we had between maybe January, February, and I had to hand in all my notebooks when I didn't work there anymore, so I have no records of all this. But our job was to draw from this red, white, and blue blinking thing that was hanging over Tucson every night. And so I was scared. Bill was exhausted. He had to sleep. I was there alone on this cloudbuster platform in the middle of a desert.
Against the UFOs that were coming in, and you were trying to draw from them? The purpose
was to draw from them. And that wouldn't, at that point, I had resistance because I didn't want to be at war with anybody. And my whole...
and he conceived of them as having hostile intent.
I think he may have been right. But the first sighting that I described in Maine, where the two objects flew by behind and before clouds very close, then I had a very paradisic energy experience. That the air got very luminous and like in paradise, lovely. I feel that in this garden here, you know. And so I wasn't convinced that all of them are necessarily evil.
Mm-hmm.
I thought they were different kinds. I don't know why and what they were doing. And I didn't want to be drawn from them. That's the main thing. I carried out like a soldier is told to do something, and we were, as my father called it then, the battle of the universe, and
the Planetary Valley Forge.
Whatever he called it, and I wasn't that warlike. And,
right.
you know, I tend towards Quaker pacifism, and so I was an unwilling participant at that point. I did what I should do, but with fear and trembling. Really, that's the cold and contracted and feeling uneasy about being involved with this. And there were things that happened, like we grounded the cloudbusters into an artesian well, and we had trouble. The sand was filling up that well. The water systems weren't working. Should I say? It was not, I certainly wasn't an equal in even discussing the problems or what was puzzling us and what was happening, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And what I think now in retrospect is very significant, that I read in a book about the onset of that in January of 1951 was also the time around the Organo experiment, like the ending, when they began to have a series of bomb explosions on the Nevada flats and, you know, past the old Alamogordo, first one. And I think that our spreading high counts may have had something to do, but that isn't something we were aware of, because they didn't tell you when they were exploding nuclear bombs. So
well,
altogether, the world got to be a scary place. Before that, I felt okay in the world. Whatever happened, the atmosphere was nice, the clouds were white, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I was right to feel uneasy, because it's gotten only worse since then, you know. So my whole relationship to that project, I mean, I'm glad I saw the phenomena, but I am still uneasy about the whole thing, our relationship, you know.
Mm.
And I don't know what Bill felt. He had been in the Navy, and he knew how to be a soldier, and he was willing to participate and be the runner-around diplomat representative of the Organ Institute, and you know, but it got him in the stomach, so he didn't say much, but he reacted physically.
Mm-hmm.
And so did McCullough.
So your husband, Bill Moise, went to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base at one point.
On the way out to Arizona.
On the way out to do the expedition.
Well, it's written up in Contact with Space. I wasn't there. But I know he was he had a hard time getting through to them after they made appointments. And he was going to notify them of sort of like a personal messenger of William Reich. The motor principle and the equations were being offered to the Air Force, you know? And I still feel bad about all that. They really, and when I read the book Beyond Top Secret.
Above Top Secret.
Above Top Secret, I say beyond. I felt so bad when I saw that all the time they knew, not only about Schauberger's UFOs, but about the crashed one in New Mexico in 1947. And I feel incensed. They let this man die in prison when his brain was so unique. I feel, above all, grief about the loss of the lifetime of what my father might have still accomplished with maybe 10, 15 more years of life. I mean, he was so effective in what he did. So I feel very badly about the muffing, the real criminal I mean, if they would just leave somebody alone to do their work. I mean, my father financed the whole thing, and I mean, at great personal sacrifice. It's not true that he profited of it. And I feel that's all tied up, because one reaction to the injunction that he had was to make this expedition to Arizona, to the west, to the real dry regions of the USA. And what might have been, if they just hadn't intervened with his hard work. You know, he had to defend himself legally. It was just harassing to take up your lifetime and your energy. And that's really the purpose of it, to tease you. So that poisoned that whole period in Arizona. And one job that I had besides housekeeping was typing up the documents. I did that also at Alban Towers in that Washington era. But I was working with documents and organization of documents on Orob Desert. I think it was I was busy making tables of contents. I think it was the red thread that I worked on at that time, the red thread about a conspiracy to destroy the discovery of the life energy. So we were under attack. It wasn't just like an expedition. The attack came from the USA, I mean, criminal government. It's not a bona fide government at this point. I mean, I need to say that. And, I'm just still incensed, hurt, and I don't want to play their games anymore.
Well, it's easy to see what a threat Reich posed to them, because he started out in 1951 looking at the effects of radiation sickness at a time when the government was saying there was really nothing to worry about. Then he immediately started wandering around the countryside in Arizona and Tucson in these sensitive military bases, taking Geiger counter readings of nuclear radiation background counts, which were ever increasing, and he was getting wild readings.
When they had the line, and the line has been about UFOs, has been international. That's an international conspiracy. And I mean, enough people have seen UFOs. So it was a Gallup poll, I don't know what year, there were 10 million people
It's amazing.
in America who had seen something. I really think that as papers get revealed, that under Freedom of Information Act, like what O'Leary did with these experiments on radiation exposure, what's in the Gods of Eden about people being sprayed with germ warfare, our own government spraying us, and that's where the AIDS epidemic probably is manufactured virus. Okay.
Well, that's the point being, is that as we learn more about that period of the history, the Cold War era,
but it's
the
just
more
a minute ago, as history goes.
Sure. It's 5 minutes ago in terms of human history, but this is, your father was dealing with important things. He wasn't a madman, and
no,
the facts
and he
are
was
now
right that
coming
there's
out.
a conspiracy, and he was right they were all in cahoots, and it's coming out more and more. But the saga, he's both criminal, insane, and look at this crackpot. That is worldwide, organized spread. And they have had a campaign of disinformation. And that's why my honesty and my going forth like a little somebody, God has opened, I've spoken in 31 countries, over 18 years. And my whole purpose has been to humanize the other parts of the earth. Never mind about the USA with all their conceit and their untruths, Because if you're pretending to be the most democratic and advanced nation on earth, and you're doing that kind of thing, you're worst, I think. Because you're the most, lying, deceitful, whatever. So I just really, I mean, I have very much flirted with the idea of leaving the USA. I almost emigrated to Australia, but that's no better. It's not, no, there's no place on earth. You know, I've come to the conclusion we have to make the new world, and that's what I'm busy doing. And I really, there was a point at which I decided I couldn't do all this science. I'm not a real scientist. I could do good medicine, but I mean, I'm obsolete now in medicine. I mean, I'm not keeping up with the way they're doing it now. But I made a conscious decision that I was going to concentrate on human transformation, because until human beings had a sense of their inner truth left or not destroyed, then there was no hope. You know, I got involved with the so-called growth movement, humanistic growth movement. I mean, that happened. I earned my living with that. But then they got into Leary and all these guys with their drugs and enhancing the mind with drugs, which Hitler did. I just learned last night. Hitler, a peyote and cocaine addict? What? That's news to me. I knew he was crazy, but anyway. So I'm trying to be a model of a emperor's clothes kind of person, a rooftopper, I call it. No more secrecy. You know, what they do now is reveal your secrets to misuse them, but to have a sense of honesty that is rock bottom. And you can talk about ethics, but the whole thing is just rotten. And the government in this, and it's all structural. I mean, it's drilled into children, and that whole business that you have acquainted me with compulsory education. It's very hard to escape from all that. Really.
The missiles armed themselves.
Wow.
The missiles armed themselves and got ready to launch, and there was nothing that the Russian military could do to pull it back under their control. And they went around and they interviewed military people. The entire town had seen these things.
How come they didn't have multiple explosions?
Because they shut it back down. They disarmed it after that certain period. But it was just like.
Interesting.
When did that occur?
I don't remember the year, but the ABC News report was this past year, and it occurred probably in the 70s, sometime in the 70s.
Okay, I have this book about the UFO hanging over the nuclear plant.
Mm-hmm.
Something about Connecticut River Valley.
Mm-hmm.
It's somewhere in my library. I'll send it to you.
Well,
I don't need it anymore.
That's one of the things that that has been most reported, is that they're hovering over military installations, which brings up a really interesting point, is that we've spent all these billions and hundreds of trillions of dollars on military equipment, and these things can just fly right in
and immobilize them.
or set them off or whatever they want.
Anti-electronic effect.
Right, and they can do whatever they want, and therefore why are we paying for all these defense when we can't defend ourselves from these UFOs that are there?
Well, the whole thing is really well, anyway, so I think it's important. What was important to my father was the propulsive power. What is the thing that is anti-electronic? And I've had that kind of experiences. I had several times when I was trying to make the property list for Organon after the death of my father. I brought up an assessor, because it had to be by law assessed. And he had a Polaroid camera, it jammed. And I've had many, many more experiences where the electronic instruments in that environment didn't work.
In Ohio.
Yeah.
He transmitted to them the equations that your father had worked out.
He didn't give them, he offered them.
He offered them, and they promised that they would take care of the gravitational equations that your father. Now, what was that? How did that?
Well, that was his big trump. He didn't give it to them. They didn't accept it.
Oh, they did?
Nothing
I
more.
thought they
No.
did.
He informed them that the motor principle and the equations, anti-gravity equations, existed.
Okay.
He, like an emissary.
Right.
I'm offering you this, and nothing happened with that.
Well, nothing
So-
happened, but I'm almost. I just read it, and I'm almost positive that they did accept them from him at that point. No.
He got an appointment with somebody lower down, not the person that he'd made the appointment with, and he transmitted. They know these two things existed. I mean, he got as far as
Right.
informing them, I'm coming for Dr. Wilhelm Reich to offer you this. But the equations, well, they're in the KR to the X number system. And the motor principle is in a film that shows the motor working. When we just went near it, this thing started turning. And it's not mine. I'm just.
There's your glass of orange. You had one
Yes.
earlier.
Come on. Okay, but I'm interested in the fact that he based his defense. He said, I'm not, these volumes were secret and suppressed evidence, not all of them, but volume, the one about contact with space. And by the way, that's not clear. If you read the book Contact with Space, because he had printed 1,000 copies of that. And he told me, if anything happens to me, please get them out. And it took Higgins years and years, and she's charging huge sum for them, and she hasn't brought it on the market, which is not what he wanted and what I transmitted to her to do. So the important thing is that when he read the Rupel report and what little got through the secrecy, first of all, you know, they were denying that the whole thing exists, the whole phenomenon. And then after he said, well, they have questionnaires and they're taking it very seriously and they're shutting up people, you know, everything that's in above top secret. He said, and my father said, aha, they're using the orgone energy. They're riding these streams. They are, and he had this system where the swings could be any distance, you know, and we knew that something was rotating. He had some things that probably Schauberger and he should have gotten together, because Schauberger had the principle of the spinning wave in practice from the trouts in the river, and he made a UFO that the Hitler people knew existed and worked. So what happened to that discovery? That must have been followed up. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so, you see, when they said, what are UFOs, maybe it's secret USA, maybe it's secret German, maybe it's, you know, I said, poo-poo, nobody has that principle, but Schauberger's, I almost flipped when I saw that last week, when you gave me the book. Schauberger had an actual thing that went through the ceiling with levity. So, well, I think, I wish they'd gotten together, because my father had it in astronomical terms. He saw that this Kreiselwelle, KR to the X, KR is Kreiselwelle, a pendulum wave. And he saw that everything was related. If you took the lengths of a pendulum, it doesn't matter what weight is hanging on the end. So he made this mass-free set of equations, and he converted all the equations of motion, the Newtonian ones and everything, into a mass-free. The factor n disappears, you know? So I think he really had the tail, and he saw that wave and particle, wave and particle. But it's opposite to the formulation of Einstein, because in Einstein the inertia is the maximum with the speed of light. And here, the mass forms when the thing slows down and starts spinning in situ. That's total. There's several really collected opposite functions. So my father thought the most important thing is that they let me go to prison when I'm telling them that I have this whole technology in my head. It's not worked out, but it's the beginnings, you know? And if they knew about Schauberger, because they knew what Hitler had, then they knew that there's a spinning wave that works. I mean, they let him die in prison. And I really thought until the end he would be whisked away, saved so the brain could start working in a good environment. Not that. And that I really can't forgive him.
Well, why do you think if he had a good understanding of the propulsion systems of UFOs, why did they let him rot in jail?
Why stop a thing that's self-supporting and self-financed and working? And I think that is criminal. It isn't not helping, but to impede it? You know what I mean? It's more than just criminal. It's a real conspiracy to destroy the discovery of life energy on Earth. So he thought, I'm keeping this, he thought also panic on Earth. If people think we're visited, we're not the last word, And he was sympathetic, the kind of panic that people go through that Mach describes, And so human beings weren't ready, and maybe it took another 50 years.
Well, they destroyed Schauberger too, it seems. They really ruined him, and
so what's the idea?
I don't understand it myself. I don't understand why they would.
I mean, if
you know that they had at least a crashed saucer.
But why?
In Roswell.
Yeah, I know. And that was already
body.
the big shock of my life. That thing. At that same time, in the early 50s. 47,
48.
he was, the attack of Brady started in 47.
Oh, I see.
What is this? So what is so forbidden about working and accepting that there's a life energy? And this is still going on, this is a struggle going on with Harar and Heiko Lasek in Berlin, and DeMeo is hurt, because some people say, oh, it's just this and just that, what is called air germs. My father got very angry.
Give it a name and dismiss it.
Yeah, everything is explained away, every phenomenon, instead of seeing, something doesn't add up.
Right.
Why don't we investigate that different function? So I don't understand I understand that they were afraid of panic, that if people found out 10 million people have seen the UFOs, like the Gallup poll, at least a decade ago, I don't know how long ago, maybe more, that they found that so many people have seen. And if you're in the outlying areas, I've been in Tasmania on a hop farm. I told you about the farmer, that the whole area of Tasmania had sightings that night, and they look up and there are these hop frames that are very high. They're probably as high as this. I saw the frames. And they thought it was just, at first, that a helicopter was looking at it, but then they realized the thing was soundless, and there was a mothership, and little ones came out and spread all over Tasmania, and there were hundreds of sightings, and hundreds of people saw them that night. But it was located over this hop farm, which was sort of in the center of Tasmania, somewhere in the middle of nowhere. So I met the man whose farm it was, and he told me the story. So anytime you're away from where there are masses of people, you'll see them. So we really need to go by the Freedom of Information Act to the Supreme Court, who vetoed, who said what. It's also secret.
Right.
So we need to become rooftoppers. We need to stop with all that secrecy. So you can misuse people's secrets, but if everybody were open, no more secret services. That's really doing the world in. When they murder, and she knows about El Salvador and what happened in South America. But I think it's really vital that we open the lid on secrecy in the secret services. Nobody needs it anymore,
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
And I think that they are the guilty ones.
Well, when your husband went, it says there in Contact with Space that when your husband went to Wright-Patterson, he had an appointment to meet with the chief guy there.
Yeah, but he didn't meet the chief. He met some.
No, you know why? But he canceled. The chief, the head of the base, said he had a meeting with a group from the CIA who had just flown in from Washington, and
Really?
that's why he couldn't meet with Bill. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember that. I really haven't read it that often. I just know that that's my proof that we were dealing with, you don't just ask for an appointment to transmit as an emissary the offer of the motor and the equations.
Right.
The mass-free equations.
Right.
And, nobody knows what's in that math. I don't know whether it exists still. It's my fault. There I should have really kept it or made copies. He did several things. He redefined the second as having, the minute as having 100 seconds.
The pendulum.
He took liberties. He changed some of the math.
Let's see here. Let's start at the beginning.
And you have to understand what he was doing that's different.
Okay, first of all, let me tell you that we started in a Freedom of Information Act search, and they're trying to tell us that they have nothing on Wilhelm Reich at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. No records of any of this.
Yeah. They received it.
We know. I know that they have these things, and
it's total denial, and the denial is all through the UFO thing. They have to admit that there is a civilization visiting from somewhere, and not Earth, which is ahead, but is very bad off organotically. Because what I read in that little above top secret, the crashed UFO, they were very skinny, they had a blood without red blood cells. They didn't look very healthy, I mean, they looked like they weren't strong by our definition of what health is.
Right.
So, and they indicate we have a desert development on our, whatever place they come from. And, the motivation of the UFOs is really that. And I don't think it's going into the paranormal so much. I don't believe that.
You think it's they're biological entities that...
Yeah, maybe they have ways of hibernating you while you travel, or, but I don't think it's as esoteric as another dimension.
You don't think that they're,
No.
like coming from future times, or it's the human race?
No, I think that's totally misleading. This is very concrete. I mean, I don't have any evidence that we're dealing with occultism. And I think I don't deny that that's the people who had these abduction experiences report, like the little mini sensors that they put in and so
Implants.
on. And the trying to breed a hybrid and all that makes sense. That they've lost their place of living. It turned dry. Maybe it's Mars, maybe it's further, who knows. But I don't think that's the important thing. What is they're certainly observing us. I mean, if they were at war with us, they would have been more warlike by now, right?
Well, they can't fight us face to face because they're little suckers. They're only this high.
No, but some creatures that might be robots are 6 foot and more.
Oh, the people. Okay.
There may be different kinds of UFOs.
Kinds.
I think there are different kinds. Some of them smell like sulfur and have giants that may be robots. Who knows? But the main thing is Earth is relying on electronic devices entirely. And the life energy devices are this way. And that's what my father knew, because he had found Geiger-Müller tubes that went silent and then suddenly came back to life weeks later in a high orgon atmosphere. I mean, he had and you can attack this, talks to an electrophysicist, and I'm not a scientist, but I saw his phenomena, and they're unexplainable by their standards. A piece of radium should, for I don't know how many years, at least 5,000 years, discharge a charged electroscope, and I saw it staying up, and I knew they're wrong. This is something different.
The important thing is that the Air Force did receive the information.
Absolutely, so help me God.
Well, it's all right here. You can see that they motorized it all. Yes,
they did, and they're just deniers. They're liars, and liars, and they're lying about everything. And I think it's time for roof-toppers. I mean, Clinton is as bad as all of them. So, you know, I think
I
I'm very
didn't mean to depress you
disappointed.
about that. I shouldn't have, I shouldn't have mentioned anything.
But really, you know, I also think, but it's in the structure. I think they're not even...
It's not one person to blame. I mean, it's the structure.
No, but the structure can't stand a piece of truth, you know? And that's the terrible thing. That's, again, getting back to my decision. I'm going to leave all of this. I can't deal with it. I'm going to work on human transformation and put little seeds of something new in the world, if I can. I really think it's a systematic evasion of truth that is so severe that they'd rather die, and they're going to. You know, I mean, go under as a civilization totally. I think that I'm not religious about orgonomy, but I think that the life energy discovery explains so much of what's happening now, namely the dying of both the energy in the organism, the cancer rates going up like crazy. They're going to be 100% very shortly. This is truth, 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 so help me God. And the human race, if it wants to survive and keep that earth alive, needs to listen to some of these warnings that Wilhelm Reich issued about desert development, death of the life energy envelope. And it's all getting truer the longer the time elapses. I think the people who hide and aren't willing for the space age to be a vitalistic one rather than a mechanical one, I think the new age is going to look different. And I don't care whether there are many worlds and many dimensions of existence. I think we are on Earth in living bodies, and we need to deal where we are right now. And I really think the UFO thing is threatening to go like the drug epidemic into something that doesn't have application. The point is they're visiting us. Obviously we have the only green, blue jewel that still has water and so on in this solar system, and we're a desirable piece of real estate. And obviously they have to wear a space helmet in our atmosphere, so I think the idea is reasonable. They're trying to increase the amount of CO2 and methane and all these gases that they can
so that they can
tolerate,
live there, yeah.
so they can live here. That makes sense to me.
Right.
As we are getting blue and bluer, more cyanotic, you know, they may be beginning to thrive.
Right.
And that makes sense, that maybe it's a slow war of attrition.
On March 20th, 1956, 10 p.m., a thought of a very remote possibility entered my mind, which, I fear, will never leave me again. Am I a spaceman? Do I belong to a new race on Earth bred by men from outer space in embraces with Earthwomen? Are my children offspring of the first interplanetary race? Has the melting pot of interplanetary society already been created on our planet as the melting pot of all Earth nations was established in the USA 190 years ago? Or does this thought relate to things to come in the future? I request my right and privilege to have such thoughts and to ask such questions without being threatened to be jailed by any administrative agency of society.
Okay, because remember, this is a court. He wrote this
report
report
document
for the court, for the Supreme Court, which, however, didn't review this case.
Sure.
And we need to exactly check out how come, who denied review, who was responsible for that decision. And this needs to be reopened, because he was so right.
Right.
And that is a blight on the United States.
I don't know if anybody ever suggested at that point that the aliens were interbreeding with human beings.
Well, I was shocked when I read this.
But now it's a commonplace. It's almost, when you have John Mack, professor at Harvard, talking about it as if it's a assumed thing.
Well, you know, I don't know. I think that isn't really my concern right now. But he had the right to wonder about that. And when I read John Mack just recently in Philadelphia a month ago, I said, wow, Oh, that's all about what my father's postulated. That shocked me. So when I put it into
It
the
wouldn't be shocking today if he had
Supreme
said.
Court, and also, you know, should a UFO have landed on the desk of the White House or something? Remember,
Right,
it
right.
starts with like that.
What do they
yes,
accept
and they
as
have
proof?
hovered across. What is proof?
What
A
is
proof
proof?
was all the time in Roswell
Right.
and in Dayton, Ohio, where they brought those little bodies and
Right.
those smashed chips.
Right.
So what, you know, who made the decision? I think the Committee of 12 needs to be investigated.
MJ-12.
The MJ-12. And who had a right to make that decision from all over Earth? The Condon Report says, because there's no such technology on Earth, therefore this doesn't exist. And then they kill the man that has the embryo of a new technology. And let Schauberger die, who also. So they're such double-speak bastards. And if you look at the court case, which you will because I'm going to make sure you get the originals, you'll see that it was totally like what they were talking about. Did he ship accumulators across interstate line? That's illegal. And then I'm having things of national importance. I hate the word national security. So he was playing into their hands,
yeah,
when
by
he
saying
kept
it.
his evidence secret. It's called secret and suppressed evidence. So nobody ever saw this, and this is real dynamite. And this needs to be on every newsstand. And maybe we do it because it's public property. It got filed with the courts. So I invite you to get this out in paperback, and never mind about copyright.
Okay, so what that leaves us with exactly 5 books in print that Reich wrote, that remain in print, and that wasn't it. He's written a lot of books. Here is Genitality, Early Writings, Volume 1, Ether, God, Devil, Cosmic Superimposition, out of print. All of these are out of print. Murder of Christ, People in Trouble, Reich Speaks of Freud, The Invasion of Compulsory Sex Morality, The Bion Experiments, Passion of Youth, Selected Writings, The Impulsive Character, The Bioelectric Investigation of Sexuality and Anxiety, Children of the Future, The Cancer Biography, and Sex Poll Essays. Whoa! Okay, that's Listen Little Man. And Record of a Friendship with A.S. Neal, The Sexual Revolution, more Sex Poll Essays. All of these books are not available because, well, the executrix, again, Mary Boyd Higgins, will not put them back. Whoa. They're just jumping off the shelves. Do you want to talk a little bit about Mary Higgins and the whole publishing history?
I put it in there.
Did you know that character analysis is now out of print?
No. It's a joke.
It just happened. I called the publisher,
Yeah.
and they said it's out of print.
Okay, somebody's
now
trying to
there's
get
only-
it all off the market.
These are the books that are in print. Listen, Little Man, Mass Psychology of Fascism, and Function of the Orgasm, and that's it.
Well, the
No Bion
volume 3 needs to be out. Everything else is out of print.
Everything.
Well, then she needs her own publishing company, or you do what I told you. Get the copyright laws for students who want to study something unavailable, not in
Yeah.
print, and you just give it out as a student's edition,
Right.
in spiral bound, no book,
Right.
just copied from the records for students of this subject
Right.
that were already in copyright and in print once upon a time. And I don't know. I don't understand what's going on with Higgins now. I've lost track.
It's pretty amazing.
Well, maybe she was put in there to quench the whole thing. And that is more and more possible. Because she's acting like she owns it, and she's not interested in the world knowing. She's adopted this attitude that he was not into followers and the masses, having been very concerned with the masses for most of his life. So I don't know what's happened. I have no contact with Higgins. But I would like to see everything available. I wrote to Farran. I'll find the letter for you that I wrote to Farran Strauss. You can publish that. I've gone in circles over this, and
Right.
I put it in her hands. It's a
Right.
solo job. He didn't get any balances or checks on this position. She's
Right.
enjoying the power, but she is really hurting the knowledge of the world, that
Right.
lest I'm forgotten. That was his big concern.
Right.
I need to keep this available. So, thank you
Thank you.
for even digging at it. But I feel helpless. I feel like, if the world wants dishonesty and secrecy, and they get what they deserve. Everybody should be screaming for the works of Wilhelm Reich. But I feel helpless. I feel like, if the world wants dishonesty and secrecy, and they get what they deserve. Everybody should be screaming for the works of Wilhelm Reich. Secrecy will destroy us yet. Totally. So how do we change that?